And the Nigerian Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs has dismissed allegations of a Christian genocide in Nigeria, describing them as false, dangerous, and politically motivated. At a press briefing in Abuja, the Council's Secretary General, Professor Is-haq Oloyede, said the claims being circulated by some Western media and politicians were part of a coordinated campaign to destabilize the country. Oloyede explained that ongoing violence in parts of Nigeria stems from criminality, poverty, and climate-related migration, not from religious persecution. The Islamic Council accused foreign lobbyists, separatist groups, and U.S. politicians of spreading fabricated statistics and doctored videos to pressure Western governments. They urged both the Nigerian government and the international community to reject what he called a false and destabilizing narrative, calling instead for cooperation in intelligence and logistic support. And I have here with me a professor of politics, Professor Kenneth Nweka, who is joining me live in the studio to discuss this recent issue that is trailing Trump's threat. Professor, you are welcome. Good evening.
Good evening.
So let's talk about this, this issue. Of course, as we just read, the Islamic Council has dismissed, the claims of Christian genocide and saying it's politically motivated and rooted in poverty and insecurity and not, religion. From your perspective as a governance scholar, how do the governance failures and, weak institutions contribute to the misinterpretation of, criminal or communal violence as religious persecutions?
Yeah, thank you so much. Of course, it's straight away when there is failure on the part of government or successive governments, so to say, in living up to its social contract with people, and then of course, that the social contract is all about protection of lives of and properties of the citizens, and including the provision of welfare services to the people. And so, of course, when there appears to be a failure on the part of the political class in living up to a social contract with the Nigerian people, showcasing in the killings that we have in different parts of the country. And of course, these killings go beyond certain religion, so to say. But there's no doubt that probably more Christians may be victims in these numerous killings that we have in the country. And of course, that you won't take away that fact that it could be in terms of numbers that they are more in number. That of course, when you have insecurity does not know who is a Christian and who is a Muslim. But if you have a population, certain areas, that Christians inhabit more, and then attacks are more frequent in those areas. Of course, there will be some perception, around Christian genocide, so to say. And you won't blame the United States of America in coming so strong, because these issues have persisted over time, over the years.
Right.
From one government to another, from even Jonathan's government, or even before Jonathan's government, then Jonathan's government, then after Jonathan, that's Buhari's government, and then the present government. But really, to say, you would not ordinarily want to say that the government of Nigeria is deliberately sponsoring or allowing Christians to be killed. That wouldn't be too much to say. But if you look at it from the failure of government in doing what it ought to do, arising from weaponization of poverty, and the failure on the part of government in actually protecting lives of the citizens generally. And then, then it is something to go by. And of course, that international politics, in international politics, you may not just, come in to, take certain decisions in maybe like military interventions on flimsy excuses of failure on the part of government in living up to his social contract in terms of providing citizens with security and providing them with the best means of livelihood. And so coming under the cloak of religious genocide is an easy way, for any external intervention to come in, because of course there's no other way that any external intervention can come in except by, that genocide, platform. You understand what I'm saying? So for me, looking at this, yes, there's been failure on the part of government over the years in doing what it ought to do, because the citizens have also become very complacent. They are unable to hold their leaders accountable. They are unable to stand to vote for candidates of their choices, and they are unable, to interrogate leaders, ask right questions about, their resources. And so corruption has been the order of the day. Failure on the part of government in delivering the basic needs of the people. Yeah, and then failure to protect their lives. And so this may have caused the reason, for this military threat coming from the United States of America, over the lackadaisical attitude of what could appear to be a lackadaisical attitude of successive governments over the years. And so when Nigeria has enormity of resources, so to say, when Nigeria should be able to, provide for the citizens, when Nigeria should be able to protect the lives of the citizens over time. And so no world leader, so to say, in the likes of Donald Trump, will sit back and hear people complain about some of these things, helplessly, and that would not want to intervene. But rather than even vilify Trump, or rather than also take sides, either against or for, what Nigerian government expects, to do is to say we are overwhelmed by, the level of insecurity that we have in the country, and that we would need, even though we are a sovereign nation, that we need some level of external intervention, with our own military to see how these guys can be smoked out.
Right.
Rather than, begin to vilify Trump, or rather than begin to also condemn the government entirely, or to allude to the fact that the government is deliberately allowing Christians to be killed. I do not subscribe to that.
Right.
Absolutely.
So in your inaugural lecture held recently in Port Harcourt, Rivers State, you spoke about most of these things, and you talked about, leadership, fellowship, and social contract, which you mentioned, and, citizens refusing complacency in bad governance. Would you say that the citizens are being failed by leadership in a way that would be the reason that invites foreign scrutiny into Nigeria? Of
course, that's exactly what I have said, that, the failure on the part of the political class in living up to the social contract over the years, that has brought about a breakdown in social contract. And of course, when Nigerians are complaining on a daily basis, of course, you see a lot of restrictions. For instance, over 6 months I had paid for processing US visa. And as it is right now, I do not even know when and how to go about it, because it's uncertain about, just renewing my visa because of the issues around Nigerians traveling to the United States of America, because of some conditionalities and all that. So I don't even know, that. And so it means that, and a lot of Nigerians are, drifting towards, going to the United States of America and other parts of the world, because there is something very, very fundamental around our economy. Unemployment keeps rising, insecurity, and all of those. And so when people are not sure of their lives, in the midst of the plenty that we have, as I speak to you, I come from an oil-rich state, in Rivers State, and there's nothing to show for it. There's nothing. And so whereas the resources, enormity of resources are coming from places like Rivers State and other Niger Delta states, but there's hardly anything to show for it. I come from an oil-producing community, and well over 250 oil and gas community from Umebulu, Ikweremgo, Chogota, Ibueche. As I speak to you, the road is not passable, 12.6 kilometers. You cannot access, if I need to go to the place, I need to drive with, in a trailer, or a very big truck, or an SUV. And so, and then you talk about communities having over 250 oil and gas wells. So there is the economic disparity, the inequality, the social injustice that you have, that have been perpetrated on the people, that the people continuously suffer in the midst of plenty. Of course, Nigeria has enormity of resources, and so you have many places where people have so much, and yet they are living in penury. And so no nation or in the likes of Trump and the rest, we watch such a nation continuously drift, where their citizens are helpless. They will come in a way, and the only way to come is religious genocide. That's the only platform. Otherwise, the fact that they are failing to live up to their expectations, is not enough to intervene. But it's enough to intervene when you establish religious genocide and all that. Also having evidence to show that more Christians are being killed, in the country. And so if you are helpless as a country, as a government, then the only thing you will do is to appeal passionately to say, please come and help us, in fighting this, rather than condemn what Trump has said, or rather than other people, hailing Trump or not hailing him or not hailing him will not solve the problem. Yes. But for citizens to begin to impress on the government that since they have been overwhelmed, in curtailing these insurgencies and all that, they have to collaborate with the external forces to get rid of these men. Otherwise, the essence of government is to protect lives and property of the citizens, and to provide the citizens with the best means of livelihood. And so when a government fails to do so, like I established in my inaugural, and the essence of the inaugural was to continuously raise the consciousness of Nigerians, to say it's not yet Uhuru, Nigerian's case, is likened to that of Valley of the Dry Bones in Ezekiel 37. That it appears very Herculean to deal with, including the insecurity that we have. Everything appears very, very Herculean in dealing with. Lives and properties are not protected. The citizens are suffering from, bad infrastructure. You can't travel from one part of the country to another country. One part of the country to another part. It's difficult to do so. You have bad roads and all that. And yet this government is building coastal roads where we cannot also maintain the existing roads that we have. And so electricity is something that we provide for ourselves. In our areas, we pay for security. We pay for even the light that we use. We pay for virtually everything for ourselves. Whereas it is the responsibility of government at all levels to provide this thing. Not just about the federal government, the state government, the local government. Today, we are talking about Soludo winning in Anambra State. What is the level of development in Anambra State, for instance, where people are jubilating? If you have about 2 million plus voters, and you have less than half a million that voted, it means that about 2 million, more than 2 million Anambarians were not part of that vote. And so, meaning that if more than half were to vote, probably the vote would have slided towards or against, or even more for Soludo. But again, our people who are also jubilating, are they jubilating because that the infrastructure that they are lacking, that the security that they are suffering in Anambra State, for instance, will be a thing of the past? But people are wallowing in fantasy of being part of a government where they are given little things, little handouts that take them to nowhere. And so unless Nigerians begin to realize that the pride of political leadership over followership is the strength of those of the pride, and that the power to determine their destinies remain in their hands. And that though it may stand very Herculean, for any maybe non-revolutionary steps to be taken, to take away these guys from governance, and where the ordinary people will emerge as leaders that will begin to talk about welfare states and all that. And that's one of the things that I advocated I pushed so strongly in my inaugural lecture. Yeah. And that it's not yet Uhuru. People should not think that everything has ended. Like the Valley of the Dry Bones of course, when God spoke to Ezekiel and gave him a command, it sounded very Herculean that dry bones would not live again. But when he obeyed, and of course, something began to happen. The bones were just getting up, and then flesh came and all that. Yeah. Meaning that if Nigerian case is likened to that of the dry bones, but that if we continuously push, as Marx and Lenin, advocated, that if you have a mass education, you have what Lenin calls vanguard party of followership, that will begin to continuously educate the people to say it is not ended yet. It is not ended yet. We need to continuously push for good leadership in the country. We need to push for transparency and accountability in governance.
Right.
And we need to push for votes to actually count. And when these things happen, of course, we will have a Nigeria with a new social contract that will now bring about adequate protection of lives of the citizens, including their properties, and the best means of livelihood for the average Nigerian.
Right. So, Professor Kenneth, you've mentioned or you've emphasized a lot of things as to the current situation of Nigeria, from unemployment to infrastructure. My question will be, what do you think, or how can Nigerians move past this? Because, a lot of people are saying, just by one tweet, there's a whole lot of, ruckus happening concerning this whole genocide and everything. And some say, oh, it's Christians, some say it's politics. How do we move past this to the point where this is not supposed to be an issue for Nigerians? How do we move past this? What would you say we should do as Nigerians and the government to move past this?
Simple. It should be a wake-up call for me, for the Nigerian government, to say it is not just about genocide. It's about the failure of the government in living up to its social contract with Nigerian people. Its social contract in terms of providing the citizens with the basic necessities of life and protecting their lives. Of course, during the state of nature, which Hobbes postulated, life was very, very brutal because there was no government. It dawned on man that there was a need to surrender what Thomas Hobbes called dangerous freedoms, and that if they did so, or man did so, it was now the responsibility of the government or those who are elected or are selected to lead them, to now provide them with basic necessities of life and to protect their lives, because they have given part of their dangerous freedoms to those that they elected or selected to govern them. And so that is what social contract is all about. And so when government it's a wake-up call that over time, Nigerians have not been asking the right questions. Nigerians have not been even taking part in actually electing their leaders. Results have been written in the country, because a lot of mutilations go on. The justice system is not favorable to Nigerians. How do you talk about even the Electoral Act when certain cases go up to Supreme Court because of the loopholes in the laws that we have? The ground norm, that's the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and even the extant law, the Electoral Act. And so these ones capitalize on certain loopholes to give judgments or even to award judgment in favor of certain persons to govern. And so against the wishes of the people. And so people have become so complacent, they say, look, we can barely do anything and all that. And so that has been, and so you have a cycle of, every 4 years you have a new promises given, new, hopes dashed, as you step in and all of those. And so it has been in a cyclic, what I call a cyclic obliteration of the social contract. And so the only way, for us to move forward in this country is for this thing that is happening today, this military threat of military intervention, for Nigerian government at all levels, not just about the federal government, the states, the local governments, to begin to wake up. And they cannot wake up except civil society organizations, except such as my inaugural lecture, except what we are doing in the studio, that will continue to push, for government at all levels to continuously, to wake up, to live up to their social contract. So and that is the only way that they can stand up, rejig, the governance structure system in the country, and including, certain reforms that will give enabling environment for votes to actually count, instead of this manual collation of votes and all that. So what is wrong in, uploading the results and then electronically, the results are uploaded, and then you have the summary at every level, and then at the state level, then you can see it display in the IRF and all that. And so what is wrong with that? And that's the only way that they can do that and work in conjunction with the United States of America to get rid of these ones. Not just about the insecurity that we have in certain parts of the country, even in the South and other places, there is insecurity all over. And so, but, insecurity and the poverty that we have, failure on the part of government in delivering infrastructure and all of those, constitute the totality of the failure of government. And the only way to go about it is citizens to continuously rise to demand for good governance and protection of their lives and property from government. And then government working with external forces, and then to ensure that the social contract of providing for the citizens and protecting their lives are realized.
Thank you so much, Professor Kenneth, because this conversation is going to be ongoing. Like you said, it's a circle of, trying to plead with the citizens to come out to vote. We talked about 2 million people in Anambra and only 577 plus that came out to vote. And, we hope that it's a wake-up call for not just the government, but also the citizens, and, to take charge of their country, because it is, their country. It was really a good time having this conversation with you. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you. And good evening, Nigerians. And then let's not let the guard down. Nigeria can be great again. If the dry bones lived, Nigeria can live again.
Sure. And that was Professor Kenneth Nweka.